A guy who a few years ago expressed his desire to see his political rival's wife holding their dying children who had just been shot. He wanted their children to be murdered so that it would change their views on policy. He also expressed that were he in a room with this man and he had 2 bullets, he'd shoot him and kill him. Now, we've had this conversation on various Timcast shows about what is making people so insane. There's a story I read recently, I think it was on Reddit, and it was a guy saying that he's in a relationship with a woman. He's not very political, but he knows that she's kind of a liberal. And she asked him about transgender ideology, to which he calmly explained his views, saying he didn't really care all that much, but here's what he thought. And he said she had an emotional breakdown, furious and angry that he would not agree that men can be women and that trans women are women. And he was just trying to explain, well, I mean, a male getting surgery is a male who got surgery. You can call him whatever you want, but she was not having it. And he said, maybe our relationship is doomed. And that's just one scenario. We've heard it over and over again about people who are seemingly possessed. Something has taken over their logic centers. Something is making them say, I don't care what's true. You must march in line with us. And they use violence and emotional manipulation. And you take a look at the political right, or whatever you want to call it, and it's people of rather different ideologies. So we've got an interesting show for the Culture War today. And I think it's a really great example that Seamus Coughlin is here because he and I, 15, 20 years ago, would have been the complete polar opposites politically.
True, yeah.
It would have been, he's the Republican, I'm the Democrat, and we'd be going like, oh, now we're like best friends and we go skipping together
That's
and
right, yeah.
we share spoons.
That's right. We would still be best buds even if things were polarized.
It's true though. Back then,
Illinois boys.
Even if we were politically in disagreement, we'd be hanging out.
That's true.
We'd get tacos and burritos, and it would be normal. Something changed, and so we've brought on an expert in. Let's just jump straight to it. These people are demonically possessed.
We'll leave that to the expert, actually.
Oh yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Father Chad Ripperger. I'm the Superior of the Society of the Most Sorrowful Mother, which is a group of priests that does, as their work, it's exclusively exorcism. That's what we do.
You perform exorcisms?
Yes, that's the only job I have other than praying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seamus is here as well.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Firstly, Father Ripperger, I'm a huge fan of your work, and I learned a lot about the faith through your lectures on Sensus Fidelium, so thank you for those. Those were massively important and instrumental for me in my development. And a lot of the things that I've said on this show that people have been like, wow, this guy's pretty smart. It's stuff I heard from Father Ripperger. So
yeah, well, the beauty of that is people actually say, Father, you're a genius. I'm like, yes, Aquinas was a genius. So I'm just quoting somebody else.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly it.
Shoulders of giants.
Yeah,
amen.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's the exact truth.
So a few months ago, I was hanging out with Jack Posobiec, and I can't remember what sparked the conversation, but it was something having to do with crime and the left. And I said to him, I'm not a Christian, and the story of the resurrection doesn't move me. I don't mean it to be disrespectful anyway, but doesn't.
Right.
And I said, you know what does, though, Jack? Demonic possession. Because that I've witnessed. And obviously, I'm not saying I literally saw a demon emerge from the shadows and enter a person's body, but I have seen people change their personalities seemingly overnight, begin acting in ways that I didn't think they would act, and they act in ways that seem to defy human success. This is how I've described it. There are things that I've seen throughout my life traveling the world that I describe as predictable. When people ask me if I'm scared when I go to, I'm in Turkey and there's riots happening, and it's, are you scared? And I'm like, a little bit, because you might catch a stray rubber bullet or a tear gas canister, but for the most part, people are predictable.
Right.
People want to eat food. They want to be with their loved ones. They want to avoid violence. So when you see a person who's engaged in a riot or violent or otherwise, no matter what language they're speaking, humans generally behave in certain ways. However, as of the past several years, probably increasingly with increasing frequency over the past 7 or 8 years, there seem to be people that I've encountered that they're acting in ways that defy their own human success. They are destructive to their own lives, to their families, to their friends. And I started to question this, thinking, a human being who is trying to enrich themselves through greed, or is trying to satisfy their lust or their gluttony,
Right.
you can sort of predict what they're going to do. But now I'm encountering people that it's almost like they don't care about their lives, their bodies, or anything around them. It's destructive for the sake of destruction.
Right.
So I started to feel like something has taken them over. Now, my rant is over. I'm curious your thoughts on that, and you can tell us what's going on.
Well, some of them could be possessed. Ultimately, you wouldn't know. As an exorcist, we don't weigh in on whether a particular individual is possessed until we actually have a chance to pray over them, because it's the prayer that's going to cause the person to, or the demon to actually to react if the demon is actually there. The other part of it is that one of the things that we talk about pretty extensively is that when demons attack people, one of the things they try to do is build a psychological compatibility between them and the person. So, in other words, what they want to do is get it to the point where the human being's thinking patterns are the same as theirs, and that's what you're seeing in large part. It doesn't necessarily mean that people have to be possessed, because demons can do this. There's different levels of diabolic influence and different kinds. But you can get to the point where the person is so under the influence of following their emotions and rather than reason, and following their feelings and things of that sort, rather than actual reason. And then the demons can play on that and operate on the individual to such a degree where they develop a psychological compatibility and then become very destructive. And so they don't necessarily have to possess. There's also diabolic obsession, where the demon just, especially if somebody's done something that's particularly disordered or sinful, we would say, but disordered in such a way, then the demon, that's the domain of the demonic. And so then the person's opened up the door, the demon steps in, and then he starts driving them. That's what you'll see when people switch overnight. Like all of a sudden, a person seems pretty normal, they seem to be doing pretty good, they seem like a good guy, and then the next thing you know, he looked at a piece of pornography that was cursed, which we come across from time to time, and then all of a sudden, the demon's got his foot in the door, and now he's driving the person's thinking patterns. And so that's what you're actually very often seeing.
Real quick, just sort of to kick this off, I made a point the last time we were talking about exorcisms, and you mentioned praying over an individual.
Yeah.
And so I know this is not necessarily in alignment with how you would exercise or handle this, but the scenario I propose is, what do you think would happen if there was a group of, say, leftist protesters outside of like an abortion clinic, and you walked up to them and started praying for them? How do you think they would react to that?
Depending on the degree of diabolic influence, they would everything from ignoring you to all the way viciously attacking you, even though they don't even know what you're praying.
And what do you think would happen if you walked up to a Christian conservative and began praying over them?
He would just stand there looking at you, or maybe even thank you.
Exactly. And it's funny because when I bring this up to people, even people who are not religious be like, oh, the conservative would say, thank you, Father. The leftists would start freaking out. They'd scream, they get angry. And I'm not suggesting that implies or proves demonic possession. I just think it's kind of funny that if you attempted to pray over someone in some kind of exorcism and they were of the left, they'd lose it. They'd be angry.
Yes.
Whereas I think your average, honestly, not even your staunch Christian conservative, if there was like a regular working class guy of a frail Christian background, he'd be like, oh, well, thank you. Like, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, well, in point in fact, I think sometimes you don't even have to pray. You just have to be there, because the demons know who and what you are. They've been watching you your whole life. And so if they're influencing somebody to a high degree, the person doesn't even know who you are, and they're going to attack you.
Well, that's actually funny. We had on another priest before. He wasn't an exorcist, but he was explaining that. How would you describe like items of like religious importance?
Sacramentals, yeah.
That if you brought them near people who are possessed, even if they can't see them, they react to them.
Yeah. They do, yeah.
It is kind of funny though, because let's just even step back from the idea of you trying to pray over this group of people. If you walked up wearing the clothing that you're wearing now, they would react instantly without you doing anything.
Oh yeah, actually, there was a time when this was a number of years ago, but there was a point where I was actually working on a project, so I actually went into Walmart. Forgive me, but I went into Walmart.
At least it wasn't Target.
I went into Walmart, and because I was in civil clothing. I wasn't actually in clerics. And this kid walks by me who, having been an exorcist, there's some kinds of possession I can look and say that guy's possessed. Whoa. Others you can't. You have to pray over them first, because sometimes the demons hide. But this kid just walked by me, and he turns around, and he instantaneously the demons manifested, because the demon knew who I was. So they can actually tell just even who a priest is.
Just like you're walking past him and he turns and he had like a reaction.
Yeah, he turns and then he just said, I can't even remember what he said, but he said something to me, which I'm just like, yeah, I see you.
Whoa. So let's start from the beginning. Can you explain to people what an exorcism is, what you've experienced, what is going on right now?
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to just make one observation, which is that everything I'm about to tell you is stuff that's based upon the 2,000 years of authors having written on the topic, and then not just my experience, but a number of different exorcist experience. So I'm just telling you, this is what I'm seeing in the field. So because people can disagree, I understand that. But I just want people to know that anything that would be my own theory, I'll say, hey, this is my theory, just so that because that'll kind of clear up a lot of, because people just say, oh, that's just his theory. But I'm just basing that on those two things. So this is what we actually see. So basically what an exorcism is it's a ritual. It's a series of prayers that you actually say in relationship to somebody who is diabolically possessed, because you can't actually, the church doesn't let you proceed to actually doing the solemn rite of exorcism over somebody until you have certitude, which we can talk about what those signs are, but that you have moral certitude that the person is actually possessed. And then once you do, then you say this, and then you pray it over it in order to drive the actual demon out of the person that's possessed. They can also possess not just people, they can also possess things and animals and things of that sort, which we see in Scripture. So, but that's less common than you actually see in relationship to, although the stuff in relationship to location is becoming more and more of a problem because people are doing so much evil in the world today.
Well, this is part of what I just wanted to flag for the audience, too, because this might have slipped past some people. But the way the media portrays this is Catholics are a bunch of superstitious rubes, and anytime something seems off, they jump to it's demons. But the reality is, if you want to get an exorcism, there is a lengthy investigative process to ensure that you actually don't just have some mental illness or you're not making it up or whatever else it might be.
Yeah, in fact, we have to go through a process. Sometimes it's faster than others. Sometimes you'll walk into the office and you're talking to somebody who thinks that there's some type of diabolic problem. They'll manifest right off the bat. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have to go through a process of making sure that there's all the natural possible explanations for this aren't excluded. So one type of diabolic influence is diabolic obsession, where they obsess the person, right? And so you can get people who come in and just say, I've just been depressed and this and that, and you'll just say, have you had any blood work done? Because a lot of times, if you have a problem with your thyroid, it can actually cause a form of depression, and so people have to do that. So there is a process that people actually have to go through before they ever see me. Ultimately, because I have a series of layers where people have to talk to a lay team that does the initial investigation. It's a vetting process. So by the time they get to me, there's a pretty good indicator that, okay, there's been what we call a preternatural sign has occurred, and so we know the person's actually possessed. But that takes time.
And so when you say manifest, you've mentioned this a couple different times. For the audience, what does that mean?
Well, manifest comes from the Latin word manifestare, which basically means to show yourself. So the demon does something that indicates in a clear way that you're not dealing with something that's natural or human. It's beyond human capacity. And those are in three categories. So the first is that the person speaks a language that they've never studied. So one case I actually had, which actually ended up in the movie Nefarious, which is kind of ironic, but one of the cases I had is this guy who had never finished high school started speaking a form of Phoenician that had been defunct for 3,500 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, and then I've actually had a case where the person had never studied Latin, but the demon would speak to me in Latin and was perfectly conversant. So this is an indicator like, okay, this is not natural that someone who's never studied a language, doesn't know anything about a language, all of a sudden is perfectly fluent in the language. So that's one of them. The other one is what we call occult knowledge. And those are of two kinds. They'll say things like, hey, I know what you did this morning, and then they'll just start describing in detail, even though that was the first time you had ever seen them. And so that's an indicator, because demons are able to watch us and that type of thing, and so they'll communicate that through. That doesn't happen too often. Another form of that occult knowledge is they'll have knowledge that's beyond their capacity. So as a human being, or they've never studied a particular subject, and then all of a sudden they're telling you stuff that you're like, well, wait a minute, how would you know that? So I've had that a few times in one of the cases I'm working on right now. The demon actually started telling me theological distinctions that are known only by guys who have studied that particular area for years, and she has no theological formation. So there's that. And then the last one is those things that are beyond human capacity, just a general category of beyond human capacity. So like levitation, changing shape, which is what you see a lot of times, morphing, which is about 80% of what you're going to see, or 90%.
Really?
Yeah, because the demon is going to show him. St. Thomas Aquinas actually mentions this in his commentary on Peter Lombard's sentences, that the way when demons manifest, what you're seeing is the showing of some aspects of the characteristics of their personality. And so you do get a sense. And so over the course of time, when you've dealt with the same demon several times, as soon as he manifests, a lot of times it's like recognizing Tim. Say, "Hey, Tim, how you doing?" It's the same kind of a thing. I mean, I wouldn't be that informal with the demons, but
like morphing, as in the person physically changes in a
person physically
way.
changes shape, and they do it by varying degrees. So sometimes they can actually just change complexion color, like instantaneously. All of a sudden, they'll turn this. It's called cherrywood red. So they'll turn this specific color instantaneously, which human beings are not capable of causing. Or they'll actually physically change shape. So in some cases where I've had women who are possessed, the demons, when they go full-blown manifestation, they'll morph into what looks like a man. So because the demons actually portray themselves as male than female, except when they're trying to seduce. But other than that, they appear as male because of the fact of the nature of angelic nature.
The first thing I'm thinking is, where's the video evidence of morphing or levitation? But we'll put a pin in that, because people speaking different languages they should not know is actually a well-documented phenomenon.
Yeah.
I just did a quick Google search.
Yeah.
I woke up from a coma speaking French, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
That's not 3,500-year-old Phoenician.
For sure. Yeah. I simply did a quick Google search of this, so that when you hear something like a person all of a sudden begins speaking a language they should not know, as is well documented in science.
Yeah, it is. But
now, 3,500-year-old Phoenician.
Yeah, the question becomes back to the causation. So then that's really what we're trying to get to in relationship to when we're trying to assess whether someone actually is diabolically possessed or not. So causation. So something like, okay, so you've been hit over the head. That doesn't mean, though, there's a principle called the principle of sufficient reason, which basically states that I'll give you the long version and then give you the short word. It states the existence of a thing is accountable either in itself or in another. Okay. The short version is that you can't give what you don't have. The individual who wakes up speaking French has had to have heard it to some degree for an extended period of time in order to be able to, once there's some type of brain injury, for that to be unleashed, for that to happen. That would be a natural cause. That's distinct from somebody who doesn't go through anything like that, and then all of a sudden, boom, they start able to speak languages. It's also a little bit different, too, is because demons, their knowledge is infused. They know all languages. And so one of the things that we'll often do is to test people to see if they're possessed we'll try different languages on them just to see if they actually know. And if they respond in that language, then we know that this is possession, as opposed to, someone such as this. So it gets back to the nature of the causation. And that's one of the reasons why, Seamus said, it takes a while for us to do a full vetting process to make sure that there isn't something natural like this that actually occurs. But some of the other things, though, are obviously beyond, like levitation, which you don't see too often, but the morphing, the changing.
The head injuries won't make you levitate. Might make you feel like you're levitating, but you will not levitate.
You've witnessed levitation?
Yes, I have. And when you talk about, let me just make this observation. People have this idea that, every single day what I'm seeing is what you see in Hollywood, like on the movie The Exorcist and things like that. Have I seen all that stuff? Yeah, I've seen all that stuff. But it doesn't happen only in about 7% of the cases.
Like head spinning around and...
Oh, yeah, changing. Like I said, that's just all part of the morphing thing.
Like actually their head spinning?
No, but
that's Hollywood,
Yeah, that's Hollywood. I mean, the head spinning. I haven't seen that. I don't know of any exorcists who's seen that, but I have seen people's facial structure change. Well, my nickname for him was Charlie Brown, because anytime this demon would manifest, he had a normal facial structure. All of a sudden, it would go complete. His head would look like a beach ball. So this is not something that's normal. And it's not just me seeing this, it's all the people in the room, because we have several people that assist us during the process.
So is this the demons messing with your sense of vision when you're in front of something like this? Do you think the face actually changes shape to some degree? What does this come from?
Yeah, there's three possibilities. If you're talking about something that is beyond the natural physical laws, then one of three things is either happening. It's either happening where the light hits, and then this is what Aquinas says. When the light hits the person as it's coming towards you, he changes the light as it's passing through the medium to come to you. The other one is they can change it in the actual sense faculty. So they're actually changing something, and they can also change it in your imagination, because they can affect your imagination. So they're changing it somewhere in that. Now, the imagination thing, I think, is really most predominant, because what you'll see is sometimes one person will see something and another person doesn't, or one person will hear something and someone else doesn't. And then that's an indicator that it's probably more on the imaginative side than it is actually on the senses. So there are different ways in which they can actually cause that. But to get back to this, so that you can't give what you don't have, that's what we're actually looking for is there an indicator that this person is there something in them that is beyond human nature, and that we call that preternatural, not supernatural, because that pertains to God, but preternatural. The other thing is then those are the primary signs. Then we have what we call secondary signs, and those are the psychological patterns that you'll see with people possessed, which you were talking about, Tim, before, where it's the animus delendi, where every single thing they do maximizes damage to within the capacity to do so. That's an indicator that there's a diabolic.
Explain that again.
In other words,
they do maximizes their capacity.
Yeah, there was a particular politician, I won't name who it was, but at one point I'm like, this guy's got to be under diabolic influence, because he was a master at every single thing he did, maximized the damage that he could do to our country within the capacities of his office. And you see this from time to time with people. They're just destructive everywhere they get, and the malicious, right? The malice that you see, the consistent malice that you'll see.
Do you think that as atheism rises, is that or that people sort of recede from Christianity, demons are able to influence more in this country?
To some degree, but what it really boils down to is that the domain of the diabolic is what's sinful, or what we would say that is contrary to the natural law, or contrary to the way God designed us, which is what you were describing before. Human beings are designed to function a certain way. When people act contrary to that through their sinfulness and that type of thing, that actually empowers the demons and opens it, and it becomes because that's their domain, which is the sinful or the disordered. And so anytime we do that, it empowers them or opens up the door for their influence in that particular area. So the fact that in the culture we see it just getting worse and worse and worse, and people behaving in ways that are more and more unnatural or irrational even, is an indicator that the sin is slowly overtaking it. And how much diabolic influence is in a particular person's life is ultimately up to God to determine. But that's because even though we can open up the door, it's up to God to determine whether the demons can step across the threshold or not.
How does someone come to be possessed? Do they have to be open to it? Do they have to?
A lot of times, actually, are. So there's three possibilities for that open up the door for someone to become possessed. The first is where they do something seriously disordered, like getting involved in the occult or killing somebody or something like that. So that would be one way. And by the way, not everybody who does those things necessarily becomes possessed, but that would be so they have to do something that's pretty gravely disordered. The second is some serious grave disorder has to be committed against you. So this is one of the things that we see, that a large number of the women that come to us, about 50% of the women come to us, have either been raped, molested, or severely psychologically or physically traumatized. And so that disorder is, again, the domain of the demonic. And some people say, well, that's just not very fair. On the other hand, those people, as they work their way out of the possession, become some of the best and most virtuous people I've ever met, through that process. So that it does actually, God does permit it for a function for them. There's a good that He brings out of it. And then the last is purely by the will of God. Now, I've never seen those cases. I've read about them. For example, there was a nun who was possessed in Iowa in the 1930s. And at a certain point during the exorcisms, you get the demon to tell you, how did you get in? You know, what was the cause? And they'll tell you very often. Now, part of the reason you want to know that is because how they got in is a lot of times it tells you how you're going to get them back out. But in this particular case, he said, what sin did she commit? And he said, she didn't commit any sin. Well, then what are you doing here? He said, there's a sin in the region and God wants reparation for it.
Wow.
So the bishop set up where the Catholics just started doing a lot of prayers to make reparation or restitution to God for this sin that was in the region. And then within a week, she was freed. So
what is the most common reason you hear for why the demon entered during this process?
I think a lot of it has to do with the most common thing has to do with the fact that women have been raped or molested in some fashion. And part of that has to do with the fact that people say, well, you know, it sounds to me like most of your cases are women. And I chalk that up to two things. One is that women guys will power through it more and just deal with it. Whereas women are like, I need help.
That's so funny. Women go to the doctor. Men won't even go to the exorcist.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be like, no, I'm fine. I'll sleep it off.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
He's levitating and being like, it'll work itself out in the morning.
Yeah, he's like, I'll be fine in the morning.
Yeah. The other side of it is that women will actually stop and ask for directions.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I got to ask somebody for help because I don't know what to do. I don't know what. So that's why we tend to see a lot of women. But at least for me, I tend to see a lot of that. Whereas other exorcists will see other things. So they'll see like, no, most of it's, I see like one exorcist I know, he said most of the guys that I deal with are men who are, because they got involved with pornography or they got involved in certain kinds of things against, the Sixth Commandment or something. So that's usually what you'll see.
Yeah, and that's part of why I want to ask, because just for people in the audience to know the power of some of the things they might be messing around with. I've also heard it said by exorcisms that pornography is a gateway, which makes sense. It's the devil's iconography. It defaces the human form in a very particularly hideous way, and it ensnares people. And so it makes sense to me that would be something that a person could become possessed by using. And it's not to say that everyone who uses it just goes off and becomes possessed.
That's right.
For most people, the problem is like, it causes psychological and eventually physical problems for you sexually.
Right.
But there are some number of people it goes further than that.
Yeah, and in relationship to pornography, for example, part of it is, as I mentioned, that the Satanists actually taught the people producing the pornography that if you curse the master copy from which all the other copies are made, it will propagate down to the other copies, and it will boost the addictive effect of the pornography. So that's one of the reasons they do it. The other part of it, the other reason that it has the pornography is just because of the addictive aspect of it. But I think that in relationship to the, it's not always that people actually have done something wrong is why they're possessed. Although once the demon gets in, then he starts driving the really bad behavior. And so that's one of the reasons why I think this is a theory, this is one of my theories, is why you'll have women who actually, once they've had an abortion, all of a sudden that's when you see the real license in relationship to sexual matters really take off in their life. Because all of a sudden there's a more of a diabolic influence. I'm not suggesting they're possessed, but there's a more of a diabolic influence.
Well, yeah, 100%.
So when you said with the story of this nun who was possessed, God wanted it to be. So that is, just simply put, God will send a demon to possess somebody?
At times, yeah.
Or he'll allow, basically, like he'll withhold the graces protecting you from possession. So it's not as if God, because ultimately he's in charge, and like the only reason demons haven't torn all of us to shreds is because he's preventing them in all moments from doing so, because they hate us and they'll take any chance to destroy us.
Yeah.
Why do they hate us?
We're made in his image and likeness.
Yeah, because
I'll
we're
let
like
him.
God. Yeah, because we're made in the image and likeness of God. There also, it has to do with envy. They envy the good life that we have in this life. They envy it. And that's why they're constantly trying to destroy it. This is also why you see the people on the left, if you've ever noticed this, anytime communism or the left takes over, there's always a degradation of our quality of life. Always. And so that's one of the signs that, in fact, I did a whole series on how communist psychology is identical to diabolic psychology. But that's actually part of what you see. The one thing that people always have to realize, though, is that God's not capricious in a certain sense. Now, we do have a thing called conscription where we noticed that it seems like demons are almost like drafted, like, okay, hey, you got to go deal with this particular problem. And he allowed it in, and then you'll find out later that he allowed the demon or commanded the demon, hey, go deal with this. For the person to become holier, the person to actually become more virtuous, but then also to get the demon his comeuppance. So he has to take a beating in the process.
Oh, of the exorcism.
I think most people have a Hollywood view or a fictional view of heaven, hell, of God. Angels are often depicted as like people flying around with wings.
Right.
Some people claim that when you die, you become an angel, and these are all not correct.
Right.
What is the origin of demons? What is the nature? Why do they exist?
Okay, so basically what happened is there's God created all of the angels all instantaneously at once, and they're in 9 what they call choirs. They're in 3 ranks each have 3 choirs. And so the ones at the top are the most intelligent, and it's basically in a hierarchy all the way to the bottom. So what happens is he created them all instantaneously at once. Now, how angels understand is fundamentally different from us. We have to have a certain amount of a sensory experience with certain things in order to come to knowledge of it, right? So I have to, if I'm going to learn mechanics, I got to have sensory knowledge of coming to have some sensory knowledge of it. That's not the case with them. All their knowledge is infused by God as things happen. So when they were first created, God infused in them who they are, who he was, what their assigned task was, which is what their nature is, because every angel has a different, and when you deal with demons, their personalities are drastically different, and that's one of the indicators of it. But, and then also that if they accept that assigned task, they get to go to heaven. If they don't, then they're going to end up in hell, etc. So that was all. So when they were first, it's called the 3 instances. They were immediately created in a state of knowing, because they, like I said, they don't have to sit about and thinking stuff for a while. They instantly know it, and that's actually one of the ways that you can actually tell if someone's possessed. You ask them a very complicated theological question or philosophical question. If the person has to think about it, you know they're not possessed. Whereas if it's diabolic, they'll instantaneously give you the answer. It's X.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like neurological process.
Exactly.
They're not material.
They instantly know it. So, okay, so they're created in a state of knowing all of this. Then the second instance is unlike us, the reason why God has mercy on us and the reason why he lets us kind of bumble through life is because we're stupid. Whereas the angels don't have that luxury. They fully know everything that they're doing, and so they make a choice, and that choice is binding for all eternity. So they make a choice, either good or bad. And then instantaneously after that, according to Aquinas, they were either damned or they got to see God. So the demons were originally created as good angels, made a decision, they rejected God out of pure malice, and then as a result of that, they were damned. And so they're in hell, but now some of them, not all of them, some of them are allowed by God permitting, they're allowed to come and afflict us for our sake, ultimately.
I have a question about this, actually, because I've heard this articulated different ways, and I also understand that when you're dealing with angels, and this is before the universe as we understand it, it's going to be difficult to have a narrative of it that's perfectly cohesive to a human mind.
Right.
But why is it said that the devil, that Satan, was at the head of this rebellion when it occurred with many different angels?
That's a very good question. So basically, St. Thomas says this, but this actually bears itself out even in session, because under duress, the demons will actually talk about the specificity of the sin that they committed in relationship to it. Now, it's always either envy or pride in some fashion, but it always revolves around something that they wanted, some perfection that they wanted, which God was, that's not your place. This is what I want you to do, right? And so they wouldn't give that up, and so there's that. Okay, so your question again? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So the idea of Satan as being at the head of all of the demons and him sort of waging the revolution against God or attempting to.
Right. So what happened is that in their test, when they had to, hey, this is your choice that you're going to make, what happened is that the other angels saw what his test was. And then they knew that because he was above them and at the top. Now I tend to agree he wasn't at the very top, but he was pretty much close to the top. That they knew that if they fell, they would be under him, and so St. Thomas says they conspired in his sin as well. So they all conspired in the same sin. even though their specific thing that they wanted was different.
This might be too difficult of a question. Maybe I'm wrong, but for those that are not familiar with hell, the devil, or whatever, what is the actual? I don't know if you could elevator pitch it if it's possible. Why is there a hell? Why is there a devil? What is all that? Because I think in order to, the way I feel. Well, first let me say this: I went to Catholic school for the first 6th grade, so I have a little bit a slight understanding. But I feel like if we're immediately talking about demons, it's kind of a why is this happening? Where does this begin? What is the origin of this conflict?
Right. Well, the origin of the conflict was that God offered them, as I mentioned, a test, just as he does with us as human beings. I mean, ultimately, whether we get to heaven or hell is going to be based on the type of life that we live, etc. But the point being is that in relationship to them, it's the same. They have free will, just like we have free will, and God respects that free will. We don't want to be around people who hate us or don't want us. God isn't any different. And so those who are in heaven are those who chose to love him and do his will as a result of that. That's why Christ said, if you love me, keep my commandments. So it's if we do his will, then those are the types of people he wants around us. On the other hand, if he doesn't want to do our will, well, then he's going to give you what you want. He's going to separate from you. If you don't want to be with him, if you hate him, then he's going to separate himself from him. So it basically has to do with the respect that he has for the will. And it also has to do with the fact that he's perfectly just. He's also merciful, but there's conditions for mercy. You have to be sorry for your sin, and etc. Whereas the demons, they're not sorry anyway whatsoever. And so God he's just in relationship to them.
And so because they have such a high degree of intelligence, it's not as if they can sit and reflect on their actions the way we can and come to greater clarity about it. They're just constantly in a position of being totally dug in. So they can't repent. Because people will ask that sometimes, why can't the demons repent or why can't they say they're sorry? Right. It's just by the very nature of how they exist, their decisions are completely 100% fixed. They're not going to come to a different conclusion about it later on. Whereas we
no
do.
Arguing.
We will come to different conclusions about past behavior the more we think about it.
Yeah, and in fact, even in during sessions, the demons will verify that. Because you'll actually say, okay, let me get this straight. I mean, I put it colloquially, but there's a very formal process by which this comes out in the session. So you were created to see God, to have the beatific vision, to actually perform this noble function, to have these perfections, and to have this delight, etc. Mm-hmm. And you committed this sin? You said, yeah. And you do it again? Yeah. And even when you talk to them about all the pain and agony they're in, they would still choose that sin because their will is completely fixed.
Is there a logic to why they choose to do these things?
Well, there is in the sense that they did get a fleeting delight out of following their own will, but then that's only at the moment of their choice. And then after that, it's pain from that point on.
For eternity.
For all eternity. At one point, I said to one demon, I said, well, because I was talking to him about his choice. And I'm like, that's not even rational. And he just looks at me and says, yeah. But that gets to your point, Tim, before, which is that's why we're seeing, and that's why we have a phrase that, evil militates to absurdity. That's why what we're seeing in absurdity is that which is contrary to reason. That's why we're seeing so much mental illness and so much stuff that just seems so foreign to us as normal human beings going on right now.
Like the transgender issue and there being 100 different genders that exist. It's just all mental illness.
Yeah. And that I agree with. But I would say, as to the earlier part of the show where I said people seem to be acting outside of the parameters of what is even an evil person who is choose your 7 deadly sins. Yeah. They seem to be defying even those motivations, right? Like I was saying, someone who is greedy, they are trying to acquire something. The reason they go after somebody is to take from them. It's a combination of greed or envy.
Yeah, there's some good they're trying to achieve.
Yes.
May not be morally good, but they're still trying to achieve money, which is a good thing.
Right, to them,
right.
Human vices lust, right? They have this desire and they seek to satisfy it through whatever this. I feel like, especially over the past several years, and even in my personal life, I have seen people take actions that would only destroy them.
Yeah.
It's not satisfying their envy. It's not satisfying their wrath. It's literally just gleeful demise of themselves.
I've got a bit of an explanation there. So basically, as Father mentioned, when people make decisions, they're trying to seek the good to some capacity, but they'll see it in a disordered way. And so they go after something that to them seems good, but obviously isn't. So when it comes to lust, for example, you have a disordered understanding of sexuality. Sex is good and it's part of God's plan for the human family and marriage. But when you put the pleasure in a disordered position where you're now disregarding the procreative function by intentionally interrupting it, or you're committing adultery or fornicating, even though, as you mentioned, there's a pleasure in it, you're still acting counter to logic because that doesn't follow the reason why God created sex, and you're defying the logic, and it is destructive. It doesn't seem as destructive as when somebody goes and has a sex change operation and cuts their penis off, but they're actually doing a small version of that.
Yeah.
We don't think of it that way, but they're doing a small version of that, and there's just kind of a poetic justice and irony to the fact that we had this sexual revolution where we said, I'm going to do whatever I want with my body to maximize my sexual pleasure, and then people started cutting their sex organs off.
There does come a point, though. There does come a point, though, where the people they're so entrenched in the evil, or that the demons have influenced them to such a degree, to where it's exactly that. We can't even see any rational good that they're trying to achieve in this process.
Yeah. It's as I was saying, I've been to places all over the country, and typically the way a person reacts, whether it's positive or negative, falls within this, predictable parameter. Sometimes people are crazy.
Yeah.
Serial killer, I don't know, they're just doing crazy things. But then you start to come across people in recent history that are doing things that literally just burn this country down.
That's right.
And there's no reason why. I'll go to them and I'll say, what about this is beneficial? And they have no answer. They just react with anger.
That's right.
And it feels like something is inhibiting their ability to think. Now, I'm sure there's going to be people with tons of rational scientific explanations on, cult mentality and all these things. But at a certain point, I don't know. The things people are doing go beyond. I'll put it this way. With cults, and I typically refer to a lot of these people as being in a cult or a non-theistic religion, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
They're looking for camaraderie. They're feeling love. Cults use tactics like love bombing.
That's right.
They surround you. They tell you that they love you and don't trust other people. Then they make you feel some kind of emotional pain if you were to defy that. There is a logic in why a human adheres to that because it feels good. But now we're starting to see people that don't even feel good being a part of these cults. They are in a constant state of disarray, pain, and disorder, and they destroy things around them. There doesn't seem to be any human benefit or even human vice that is motivating actions which just destroy. And so to me, I'm like, I think we're just seeing maybe I think possession is like the layman interpretation,
right?
But obsession and lesser forms of influence.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and even if you were to give them everything they wanted, they're still miserable. You know, which is an indicator that they're not really truly seeking the good. They're just, and this is, but yeah, I think it would be some of the lesser things. I think a lot of them are just diabolically obsessed, which is basically possession is where the demons actually take possession over a part of the body, unless it's perfect possession, where they take over the whole body, which is not too common. But obsession is where they afflict the imagination and the emotions, and they when they take it over, the person has a hard time thinking outside the box. It's just, and they can't see the truth in relationship to certain things. All they can see is this particular thing, or they think that something's actually true. And we've all experienced this in some degree, not necessarily from a diabolic cause, but just when we get angry afterwards, we realize, I was a bit over the top, which means our judgment can be affected by our emotions. But what happens is when the demons take over the person's imagination and their emotions, the person has a hard time seeing the truth for actually what it is. They can't make a proper judgment.
It's funny. I can't remember who it was that said this, but there's this great quote: "Our moods don't believe in each other." Basically, like as soon as you're no longer angry, you're like, "That was stupid. Why was I that mad? That doesn't make any sense." With, again, obviously exceptions for when you're like when you have a good justification for your anger. But I want to ask you about something that I read recently. And this kind of mapped on for me. It made a lot of sense, I should say. I was reading something, and this was written by an exorcist, and he compiled evidence from a bunch of different sources, different exorcists he talked to, exorcisms he'd been involved in. And one thing he said was that it was commonly found that in homes, schools, different locations that there was some demonic presence in, there was virtually always a demon perched on the primary chair in front of the television. Now, this was this Exorcist's experience, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on mass media, television, the internet, and the relationship between that and the demonic, the way the demons can use it.
I mean, that might have been his experience. I don't know if I would necessarily I would go that far myself to say that. I'm not saying that he's...
And to be clear, I'm not saying he said it 100% of the time, but that it was a very common thing, that there was some relationship between the demon and the television.
Well, the fact of the matter is that what demons ultimately want to do is to control our patterns of thinking, because from there our choices are going to flow. So they want to do that, and so that means that they are going to do everything they can to be in control of the various means of media. This is what, so two observations about that. That's why you tend to see the media, at a certain point you're just like, I got to turn these people off because it's constantly lying to me.
Yep.
It's just, and you'll see that, and so there's this constant manipulation, constant social engineering they're trying to do, constantly trying to manipulate people. And that's I think is diabolic in the broad sense, because that's the way demons want to control that. And I think the demons actually control a lot of the people that are involved in those, not through possession necessarily, but through various other means. This is also why, too, which you might have experienced yourself, anytime you're on the side of the good, the demons are going to be messing with your work ability, even in the context of the media. So, or they'll block it, or something that you think, this is something that should really get out there, and all of a sudden there's nobody watching it, etc. So that all being said, they want to control the sources of information, just like communists want to control the sources of information, etc. Because from that they can control you.
Well, I just want to mention here, I got to do a shameless plug, but this is part of why I'm an animator, I'm a cartoonist, and for those in the audience who don't know, we've made over 600 animated videos, we have over 1 million subscribers and 290 million views with zero spent on marketing, and we've decided to move past these shorts and create a full-length animated show to try to communicate good, conservative values, not through these ham-fisted monologues like, unfortunately, a lot of campy conservative content has tried to do, but through good story and jokes. So if you guys want to help us in that, we've got a week left to get fully funded. We're in a really good place, but we're not going to get to the finish line without your help. So go over to twistedplots.com and help us fund this animated anthology series, which tackles a new issue in every single episode and does it in a very entertaining, compelling way that spreads a positive message.
I want to talk. There's a couple big stories right now with 3i Atlas as well as AI. 3i Atlas has people believing that maybe an alien vessel is headed our way. AI, of course, some people think is literally just demonic. Before we get into those, which are going to be bigger subjects, I want to get more granular. And with all of this high-level conversation about motivations of demons and stuff, it's interesting. But can you tell us just a specific story of maybe the most either shocking, profound, or impactful exorcism that you've experienced or performed?
Yeah, I mean the preternatural signs that you tend to see they're all part of the show, right? They're just showmen. They're just it's parlor tricks. So I don't pay too much attention to that. But usually what you find is that it's the stuff that comes out underneath all of that the demons will actually talk about. So I tend to find demons very boring because they're the same. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And I've been doing this for 18 years. So after a while, you're just like. I tell people it's like being on the receiving end of a sewer pipe. After a while, it gets a little old.
Yeah.
Right? But
you never see that in the Exorcism movies. You never see guys just bored about the demons.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do an episode on that at some point. It's the bored exorcist.
And it's a grind. I mean, it's day after day you're doing this stuff, right? So, but once in a while, just like in a sewer pipe, a woman will lose her wedding ring and it comes floating down the sewer pipe. So you get these little gems now and then, right? So in doing this line of work, I mean, it's not my chosen line of work, but this is, you get these little gems. Well, one of those was in a case that I'm actually working on right now where this demon had a particular beef with Our Lady and God's chosen will in relationship to Our Lady. And he basically, what came out was this, is that every single person in the end, if you're going to go to heaven, ultimately has to sacrifice things, because St. Paul says God is all in all. So if we're going to be in heaven, we're not going to be interested in what we have here or anything like that. It's only going to be him, because all these things are good only because they have some semblance of him. But when you see him, he's so good. He is goodness itself, so you're going to be completely enthralled with that. So that means that on a certain level, there has to be, at a certain stage in a person's either life or before they see him, there has to be a willingness to put aside all other things and to see him. Now, in parlance, we just call that sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice these lesser things in order to gain this greater good. And we do this all the time in relationship to, in order to put this podcast out, there's all sorts of lesser goods you have to put aside in order to achieve this greater good, right? So this is something that we do all the time. Well, the demons, that they wanted some perfection, this lesser good, but they had to be willing to let loose of that in order to attain this greater good. Now, as I mentioned before, they only had one choice, and then after that, they're locked in. Well, his beef with Our Lady was, he said that she sacrificed herself her entire life over and over and over again and never once counted the personal cost. And he said, that's why I rejected God's plan. Because I only got to sacrifice once, and I knew it did not matter how hard I sacrificed in that one thing, I would never attain what she did through the virtue that she would attain through that perpetual sacrificing. And so I often tell people the most beautiful thing. So that was one of the things that I started to reflect on, and then later in the process, I was saying Mass. And anytime he would manifest during Mass, because the women would attend the Mass and receive communion before we'd actually start the sessions, anytime he would manifest before Mass was finished, I realized, okay, God's told him he's got to tell me something, because this is these patterns, because they're very consistent. Even though we tend to think they kind of maraud and act randomly, no, they're very consistent in the way their behavior. So after the Mass, I started the session, and I said, he told you have to tell me something, didn't he? He was so angry because by this time he's manifested, which means he's morphed, and this woman's looking like a man at this stage. He was so angry he wouldn't even look at me. So I said, shut up. You are not permitted to talk. Now, there's two reasons I did that. One is I want to maximize his pain. He's one of these, this particular demon is one of those where if you try and ask the question right off the bat, he'll hold out and hold out and hold out. Whereas if you beat him brutally for a while, it softens him up, and then as soon as you allow him to talk, then he'll talk.
And when you say beat him brutally, just for the audience, what does that mean?
That means you're saying prayers and making him reflect on certain things, and etc.
The only reason I wanted to flag it is because some number of people who have seen too many movies are going to go, this priest is beating people when they say they're possessed.
No,
I wanted to take that ammunition from them.
No, that's true. Yeah, no, it's a series of prayers and certain things that you do, reflections that you make him drag him through, and which is painful for him because it's contrary to his will. Well, so 45 minutes later, after I've made this guy's life miserable, I said, you have something to tell me? And he just looks at me, and he said, he told me I had to tell you my nature. I said, let's hear it. And he said, I convinced people that they cannot be separated from the particular good. Now, when he said that, I stepped back, and I said, that's a whopper. Because I knew exactly what that meant.
What does that mean?
In every sacrifice, you have to turn away from a particular or a lesser good in order to achieve a greater good. And what he does is he spends all his time convincing people, no, you can't let loose of that lesser good.
Wow.
You have to hold on to that. And as a result, they don't pursue the greater things in life.
Wow.
And so, and he said, and then after that, this was very interesting. After that, he said, that's how I took out your country. That's how I took out Adam and Eve. That's how I'm taking out your church. That's how I keep people in spiritual mediocrity. And he just goes down this list, and I'm like, there it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's one of those gems that floats by. And so it's helped me because then I realized, because as an exorcist, a comfortable life would be a lot better thing than I'm dealing with now.
Yeah, of course.
But I realized, no, that's a lesser good.
Well, and speaking of that, you mentioned that this isn't your chosen line of work. My understanding is that you don't choose to be an exorcist. You're essentially made one. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so usually basically what happens is that when cases arise, they come to the knowledge of the chancery, which is run by the bishop, and then he chooses a priest to undergo formation in order to become an exorcist, and then he becomes the exorcist for the diocese.
So it's not like there's a bunch of guys going out there going, I'm going to be an exorcist and this is going to be my job. Part of the reason it's important to point that out too is because I almost wouldn't trust someone who wanted to become an exorcist, who wanted that to be their career path. And so it's really important that the church just kind of picks people and says, you're the guy who has to do this.
Is there a possibility of like a reverse exorcist? Like someone who, let's just say, hates the church and wants the demons and wants the destruction and then seeks to get people possessed?
Oh, yeah. That's all the time. It's when people curse other people. So
anyone could do it.
Anyone can do it. And this is one of the reasons why.
Don't do it.
Yeah. This is actually one of the reasons why, or cursing or doing, well, the technical word is malefice, which comes from the Latin words malus facere, which is to do evil against people. And there's various ways that can be done. There's rituals, which is sometimes a curse.
So wait. Sorry, just to interrupt, but like witches?
Yeah. Exactly.
You guys know that those witches cursed Charlie Kirk a week before he was killed, and
I've actually weighed in on whether I think that was actually as a result empowered the demonic to take him out, which we can talk about here in a minute. But there's actually 3 levels of witches, which most people don't know. There's the lower tier, where these are people that kind of dabble in it and don't know a whole lot about it, and like, I'm a witch, okay.
Then we're the granddaughters of the witches who couldn't burn. Yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, all right.
You watched The Craft. We get it.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You like Harry Potter.
And there's the middle tier, and those are people who have studied to a little bit of degree, and they've been involved in it for a little while, and they'll also say, yeah, I'm a witch. But then there's a third tier, which is women who have, it's been passed, and sometimes men, it's been passed on in their generational lines for 300 to 400 years. These people's knowledge of how this stuff works is on the same level as mine. They're no hacks. Those types of people, you will never know they're a witch or a warlock. You will never know that because, A, they're doing stuff that's occult that can put them in jail. But the other part of it is that they know it's precisely what empowers them is the fact that it's occult. It's hidden.
Yes, yeah.
And they can continue doing it. Once it's discovered, then it shuts them down. And so they know how this actually works. So whenever I see these women, or these women online or these witches, we're going to curse Charlie Kirk. Yeah, it might have some effect, but I don't know if it's going to have that much of an effect.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point because you do have a lot of people who will say that they're Satanists, for example.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, Redditor here, actually, I'm letting you all know that when we say we're Satanists, we don't literally believe in the devil. But then you go, well, actually, that is what Satan wants, so you are still following him. But secondly, the people who are actually doing these real rituals, the actual Satanists, they're not telling you who they are. They're not saying, I'm a Satanist.
Well, and very often, in the community, they appear to be upstanding people.
Oof.
They will be the judge, the policeman, the fireman, the person sitting next to you in church.
Secretary of State. What am I talking about?
But that's what I mean. I mean, that's what and so they very often, they will maintain on the externals an appearance of credibility and respectability precisely so that they can maintain their behavior behind the scenes.
Does that happen in the church?
That being
ever?
said, real quick, I just
sorry.
Maybe then the Hillary Clinton thing was just way too overt for her to actually have been.
I don't know. Yeah, pretty evil lady. The
problem with her was that there's all sorts of rumors, right? And it's the principle of evidence, right? The principle of evidence says you only have a degree of certitude based upon the certitude of the evidence, And we heard the rumors, but who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would, and I mean, like. The things that aren't rumors are worse, right? She wanted to have unborn babies murdered in the womb at an unlimited capacity throughout the entire country. So it's like, Hillary Clinton's killed people? Yes, actually, she campaigned on it. That's her entire political career is built on killing babies.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing too. Abortion.
Yeah.
I think many religious people say it's child sacrifice.
For many of the abortionists that are involved in it now. Because the abortionists, historically, I think it was just a lot of doctors who had issues. But over the course of time, the industry's, I've been told this, I should say, the industry's been slowly taken over by the Satanists who are doing it precisely for that.
Yeah, I can believe it because, we have this debate where, like I was mentioning earlier in the show, Seamus and I 30 years ago are the left and right. And growing up in Chicago, I had conservative Christian friends in the suburbs, even though my family were Democrats, because you didn't really care all that much. We largely agreed with each other. And the issue of abortion was, like the debate that my family experienced, what I experienced was, Well, obviously, we all agree it's wrong. We're just trying to navigate the legal parameters for hospitals as to when there's a medical issue, an emergency,
Right.
incest, rape, or otherwise. And, my family was always, no, look, nobody should ever get an abortion as contraception. That shouldn't be allowed. The question is the government authority. And that's basically where I'm at. But now you have people who are like, for any reason, at any point, even up to the point of birth,
Yeah.
kill the child.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, hold on. There's nothing rational or logical in that at all. It's just
That's right.
just killing a baby.
Yeah. Or wiping out, at a certain point, if you look at it in the last 40 years, we've wiped out 1 billion people worldwide that way. I mean, we're talking about something that's pretty serious. The other side of it, too, is that, people ask, is abortion demonic? On a certain level, it is, if for no other reason than it's such a stubborn issue. It's intractable. Trying to get rid of it is almost impossible. And then it's also one of those topics where you just talk to people about it and they can't be rational about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think and a lot of that is because one thing I've said about this issue a lot is pretty much everyone on both sides, regardless of whether they fully acknowledge it, understand this is a life or death issue. Pro-lifers understand that this is life or death because a baby's being killed.
Yeah.
And then there's a large number of people who have been involved with abortion. And to them, admitting that was a child that they killed or participated in killing would cause them to die inside, to have to come to terms with that and recognize what they did. So they fight for dear life on this issue in sometimes an even more ferocious and driven way than pro-lifers will, because they don't want to have to come to terms with what they've done.
There's a really funny video I saw recently on Instagram where a guy is petitioning to save puppies. Do you see this one?
No.
So he goes up to people and he says, I'm wondering if you'd help us save puppies. There are these, animal shelters, and what they're doing is, and then he explains partial birth abortion. And he says, would you sign a petition to say that they cannot kill the puppies before they are born? And they're like, it's a man and woman. They're like, yeah, absolutely. And they sign it. And he goes, okay, thank you so much. And also, when he flips the page, he goes, they're doing it to humans as well. And I'm wondering, and they're like, no, we're not interested in that. And he's like, well, I don't understand. You want to save the puppies but not the babies? And they were like, no. And they walk off. And it's just very weird. Like, the logic was proven to them. They don't care.
Why do we love animals so much more than people in this society?
Precisely because we prefer the lesser good. Which gets back to this whole thing. Children are a sacrifice, right? I mean, they require a lot of work. I mean, but they're the greater good, right? And this is why people just don't want to have to put aside certain lesser goods.
I understand your point, but I wouldn't want to phrase it that way. I think it might scare people.
That's why you're not an exorcist.
Indeed. But the idea of children being a sacrifice, actually, I understand the logic, obviously.
Yeah,
you sacrifice your time, your energy, you don't go out and party anymore. But
you were not going out and partying before you had the kid. Tim has always been a very hard worker. Don't let him act like he's been reformed. Like, this guy was always nose to the grindstone.
Sure.
Which, by the way, I think that, let me address this because I think I know where you're going with this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. We tend to think in sacrifice that we're losing something in the process.
right.
And that's not the case. We're actually gaining a good that is actually more delightful, more pleasant.
Yes, yeah.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, is that when you go to a young person and say you're going to sacrifice for your kids, they feel like you're taking something from them.
Right.
As opposed to saying you are about to gain the greatest thing you've ever experienced in your life, and it will
Exactly.
make life substantially better. And you should want this more than anything. Give up those lesser goods for...
Right.
And, I think, too, the idea of greater good is for you, too.
That's right.
It's don't worry about drinking. Don't worry about partying. Don't worry about that stuff. You are going to have way better of a time. You are going to experience way more with your children. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah, and we know that instinctively by virtue of the fact that a guy who goes off to war, and sacrifices his life, what's the greater good that he achieves for himself? Honor, virtue.
That's right.
Etc. He attains something that's a greater thing than even his own physical life.
It is terrifying to me how our society and the Western world is abandoning honor.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
don't
What was
care.
it? I think it was C.S. Lewis who said we laugh at honor and then we're surprised to find traitors in our midst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
But we are a nation today of relatively little honor compared to cultures past.
Yeah.
It's in our mainstream media, in our entertainment, our cartoon shows, our comedy cartoon shows, they're just
Twisted plots,
completely without honor.
Help
and
us
we,
make an honorable
we need
cartoon.
to bring that back. I've always been I've always admired honor and loyalty.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the story of Hachiko the dog?
I don't think so.
Oh boy, this was a tearjerker. You know Hachiko, right, Seamus?
I don't think I do.
Oh boy,
I don't watch anime.
quick version. It's not.
No, I'm giving you.
So I'll give you the very quick version. Japanese professor adopts a dog. One day the dog, as he's going, he goes to the train station he's a professor at university. Dog breaks out and follows him to the train, sees him off to the train. When he comes back, the dog's waiting for him. This creates a routine for this professor and his dog Hachiko, where every day the dog walks him to the train and then comes back at 5 o'clock when he gets off the train and they walk home together. One day the professor was at the university, suffered a stroke and died, never came back. Hachiko waited at the train station for 10 years. And they had tried to remove the dog. The dog would come back, and it sat waiting, refusing to leave until his friend, his owner, came back.
It's like out of the Odyssey.
And the people came to recognize the dog, and they're like, that's just Hachiko. And then finally, one day, the dog died. They built a statue in his honor, representing loyalty. Mm. And then I think it was maybe like 13 or so years ago, or maybe 20 years ago, someone had a vinyl record of the train station where you could hear Hachiko barking. And it was so inspirational to the people of Japan that they played it over the radio, and tens of millions of people tuned in to listen to a dog bark. Because it wasn't a dog, it was the symbol of pure loyalty and refusing to abandon, those who love and care about you. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think they have a holiday, it's like March 8th or something like that, which is Loyalty Day. Mm. And it's inspirational to see that. It is also then simultaneously very sad that they're not having children anymore, and this belief in loyalty and honor is burning out. And then you take a look at where we are in the United States. Not to say that they're perfect or anything over there, but now we have a mainstream media and culture that explicitly embraces vice.
That's right.
And dishonor.
That's right.
The example that I love to use actually is Captain America in the Marvel movies. And it's an example of where I think Christian conservatives, pro-America people have sort of why this came to be. In the, I think, 2011 or 2010, I think, Captain America film comes out. It's a man who is scrawny, frail, sickly, but so desperate to fight for his country and for his people, he keeps trying to lie to be able to join the army. Kind of amazing in modern media that this is a very, very conservative, patriotic right wing. He's chosen to become the super soldier not because he is a brutish man who is strong, but because he was of good moral character. Mm-hmm. And he becomes a hero, and he fights and sacrifices, and he saves the day. 10 years later, they give us Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel is a woman who always had the power, who is arrogant and deserving and angry that she's being held back in the exploitation and use of her powers. And then the movie starts with her going up to a guy's on a motorcycle, and he says, "Hey, why don't you smile more?" And then she looks at him, and the next scene is she's stolen his clothing and his motorcycle. And the end of the film is her realizing she was always powerful, and she doesn't need to be held back by men. And it's an inversion of the story of sacrifice. Give everything you have to help those around you. Right. And you've accidentally achieved power, it's yours, and no one should tell you you can't wield it as you see fit. But the thing is, with Captain America, conservatives didn't come out and celebrate the message, the patriotism, and tell people this is what we want to see. They saw the movie and it was okay, but the encouragement wasn't there. And so what ends up happening is the right did not guard these components that they had in institutions, and this was probably one of the last moments where then you get Marvel and Disney, and they get taken over by these demonic influences, whatever you want to call it, and they say, no, don't sacrifice for the greater good. You deserve everything. It was always yours, and you are powerful. Do what you want.
And a lot of it's not even intentional. People will just write stories from their heart. They will put down to page what they think maps onto reality. And if you have a completely warped vision of the way the world works, you don't actually believe virtue is a good thing. You believe that women are just held back in every way in our society, and the only reason they're not able to do the same things men do is because of patriarchy, then you are going to write a movie like that where the woman has unlimited power and is beating all the guys up.
I wonder. We know that storytelling is how we push culture.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there have been many people on the right who denigrate storytelling.
I know.
Mm-hmm. G Prime 85 is a great comic book artist. He makes comics, and he's not a staunchly conservative guy, but he gets attacked by conservatives for drawing pictures. And he tries to explain that if you do not embrace the arts and storytelling, the left takes over. I'm wondering if that anti-storytelling, anti-art, anti-entertainment element of the right is actually influenced by demons as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, anything that has to do with culture, it's the same thing. I've mentioned this, I've talked about how communism, and the first thing we want to do is destroy anything that gives the culture a national identity or a sense of direction and purpose. That's one of the first things that they're actually going to want to try to destroy. And in relationship to honor, it's on both sides of the equation. People don't want to act honorably because honor is recognition or praise for excellence. What's excellence? Virtue. Okay.
Yeah.
And people don't want to be honorable themselves. On the other hand, on the other side of the virtue, on the other side of it, honor is recognition and praise. Well, that means that there's other people that recognize it. They want to be recognized, but without the excellence.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is what you see. This is why there's so many different people doing podcasts who have no capacities. They shouldn't even be there.
That's true. They need a background check before they give you a microphone.
Exactly.
I was talking to my wife a few months ago. We got married earlier in the year, and I don't remember exactly what brought up the conversation. It was about the importance of marriage for the sake of our daughter, the lessons that she needs to learn. And then I said, death before dishonor.
Yeah.
And my wife very, very, very much loved that. I said, divorce is not acceptable.
Right.
It is dishonorable. And, I think what it was is that we did a show, and I said something to the effect of, I did not get married for myself, for what I want. It is for the greater good. It is for my duty, my obligations, for what my family needs. And my wife was a little upset by that because she thought that it meant that I personally didn't want to get married. She thought that it meant that I was just doing it because it's something you have to do. And I said, no, absolutely not. That is a negative interpretation. Don't take it that way.
Except in this case. No, sorry.
No, what I want is to be honorable. I very much, absolutely wanted to marry my wife,
Right.
have a child, and live in honor and loyalty. And this is all a big component. My point was, it's not about me. It's about doing right by those around me to make the world better. And there are many guys in these dating communities, the red pill and all these things, and we're actually going to be debating this tomorrow on stage. And this is one of the things I'm going to bring up because no one's going to agree with me. You've got liberal feminists and you've got bro dating, bro red pill dating guys. But my point is, they'll tell you women will take from you, they'll divorce you, they'll leave you with nothing, and I'm going to get a lot of flack from guys like this, and probably from some of these female influencers. But I would rather die in honor, having lost everything, than live in dishonor.
That's right.
So this means evil people will try to ruin me, take from me, or those around me. I will not let them do it, but I will always do my best to maintain honor, even if it means I will be afflicted in some way.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's a good priest back in the city I used to live in, Father Kevin, and we were kind of having a conversation about this and some of the ways people get taken advantage of in these situations. And he said, yeah, no, when you're a good person, people will take advantage of you. What are you going to do about that? Not be a good person? Is that
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
In Montana, there used to be a law, I don't know if it's still on the books, but it said that that there are certain words that will bring even a reasonable man to blows, right?
Yeah.
And the idea behind that was, look, you say something dishonorable about the wife. He has a right to extract justice.
Agreed.
In that particular case, to protect her honor in relationship to that. And that's all gone.
That actually, so this is probably an inane story, but I was at a restaurant nearby, and my wife having a child, she has certain dietary restrictions because of breastfeeding, what the baby can or can't have. This is a very real consideration for moms. And so we had both made requests of certain dietary issues, and my wife had asked, "Hey, I can't have this. Can you check this?" Well, he called us weirdos on the ticket, and it was a joke, I guess, and it wasn't supposed to be there. They said, but I get the receipt and it says for weirdo, and I'm here with my wife and my daughter.
Yeah,
and I called the manager over and I said, "How much should a weirdo tip?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "I'm sorry." And I said, "Here's the receipt." And he looked at it. He's like, "I'm not sure." And then my wife was like, "Look down." And he saw it. And he was like, "Oh, I'm very sorry. I got pissed. I tweeted about it. And I said, this restaurant did this thing. And there are a lot of people that were like, that was so petty, Tim, you shouldn't have done that. And I said, don't insult my wife.
Yeah.
So we're also in a day and age where, again, you mentioned extracting justice yourself. Like you'll go to jail if you do that now, right? If you dealt with that in a way that
which is why the laws, so if some guy belted you because you said something derogatory thing to his wife, the judge would just say you had it coming.
Yes,
That's what we used to be.
that's how.
So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And frankly, that was a better way. The fact that you can go, like, the fact that you can walk up to someone and say the most brutal, harsh, insane thing about their spouse or even their children, and there's just no retribution allowed. It's frankly, it's anti-man actually, because men it is because we're supposed to be able to defend our families.
we should be allowed to duel.
Well, do you remember I've brought this up a couple
Bring out
times
the
on
glove
the show.
and, good sir, you've disgraced me.
I brought this up on the show a couple times when we've talked about the pro-life issue, but this is like what happened with Mark Houck. So I don't know if I've told the story fully, but there was a pro-life activist who was outside of a Planned Parenthood, and he was protesting with his family, and he had a 12-year-old son. And this disgusting old Planned Parenthood worker, this old man, was shouting disgusting sexually charged comments at his 12-year-old son.
Wow.
And getting close to them. So he shoved him away, right? Which, again, we can talk about what the law says, but that's a remarkable amount of restraint to just shove the guy away when they're being this disgusting. So this is a community where there's a Soros-funded DA, and even that Soros-funded DA looked at the situation and said, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. Like, this is a stupid, petty case. We're not going to pursue charges. Well, about a year later, Biden's DOJ charges this guy with a federal violation of the FACE Act, and they have a SWAT team raid his house at 6 a.m. when his wife and children are there because he shoved someone who made a sexual comment towards his 12-year-old son.
Yeah. So there's a story right now from a couple weeks ago. Actually, about a month, about a couple weeks ago. Somebody was trying to steal costumes from a Spirit Halloween, and he runs out the door.
The perfect crime. How would they know who did it? Yeah. You're just wearing the costume on the way out.
Well, the security guard, who's armed, grabs him, and they both go to the ground. The security guard is telling him, stop moving, and they're fighting. He draws his weapon, and he says, stop. He puts his gun away. He takes out pepper spray, and he sprays the shoplifter in the face. The shoplifter flips him over, gets on top of him, and starts punching him. Security guard pulls his gun back out, shoots him 3 times in the chest. They have charged the security guard with second-degree murder.
What?
Yep. And I tweeted that I'd be willing to assist his legal defense on this issue because it's tragic that a man died. I'm sad for the shoplifter. I really am. He was just some stupid guy who was stealing Halloween costumes. Death is an extreme circumstance. That being said, he started the fight.
Yeah.
The security guard was doing his duty in stopping a man from committing a crime and a harm. And the man who stole the costumes could have said, I have been caught. I am apprehended. Instead, he said, I am going to fight, knowing the security guard was armed and said, if you keep resisting, I'll shoot you, or something to that effect, but put his gun away. It's only when the criminal got on top of him and started hitting him again that he pulled out his gun and shot him, to which I think it's in Albuquerque, which is very Democrat. The prosecutor said, well, the shoplifter was unarmed. Security guard should have let him go.
He wasn't acting like it, right? He's trying to pick a fight with a guy who just happened to have a superior weapon. And the reality is he says he's unarmed. But if you carry a firearm, one of the reasons you can't get into any kind of physical altercation is because the person you're fighting with can get your gun from you. So right. There's no unarmed in that situation. If you have a gun and someone starts attacking you, they can get your gun and they can kill other people.
If you are committing a crime and someone who is tasked with stopping you tries to, and you escalate, you're at fault.
That's right.
Where we are now in this country is you should have just let him rob the store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the standard.
He's trying to feed his family with those Halloween costumes.
Well, have we stopped to consider the socioeconomic factors as to why he was stealing Halloween costumes?
Exactly.
But this is
because
where we're
Republicans voted against building that library in his neighborhood when he was a kid. So really the crime is our fault. Yeah.
It was self-defense, really.
He was defending himself against the system.
Let's get crazy with it. I feel like the AI conversation is bigger, so we'll start with 3i Atlas. Are you familiar with 3i Atlas?
Vaguely.
So there's this strange object that is, they're saying it's a comet. Mm-hmm. We don't know that it is, and the stories are actually quite confusing. It's changed colors. It had an anti-tail, meaning it was moving in the direction its tail was emitting, which seems to make little sense.
Right.
It's the size of Manhattan. It originated, this could all be speculation, I don't know, conjecture. Originated in the same area of space where the WOW signal was recorded in 1977, nearly 50 years ago. And so some people believe that aliens are heading our way.
Oh boy. That's, by the way, this is relevant. That's what the first episode of Twisted Plots is about. We have the 25-minute long pilot finished, and it's about the ET question and the way that that's dealt with. It's a comedic take on the whole thing. So if you want to see it, go to twistedplots.com and support the show.
Are there aliens?
Obviously, this is my own opinion on the matter. But if you just watch NASA and all the research that they've done and everything that they're discovering, everything that keeps going on, what they're finding out is the universe is sterile. There's every place. Oh, well, we think we found the building blocks. Yeah, but there's still no life. We think we found this. There's still nothing there. So my own personal opinion is that there actually aren't aliens. And I think it's also based on specific philosophical presuppositions, which I disagree with. But all that being said, so the other side of it is that a lot of the there is a book called The Alien Delusion by Gates, I believe is his last name. And in there, he takes all the famous cases and all the famous instances of, abduction and all that stuff and is able to show that there's still no ironclad evidence in relationship to it.
It seems
it is at the level of opinion.
Well, and I'm curious what your opinion is on this. It seems as if since 2020 specifically, a lot of these news stories have been floated. For whatever reason, there seems to be some interest in making us feel as if there are ETs and that they're close by. And it's not done in a way where they're bringing some guy on the news who's going, I was probed and this is what happened. They're doing it in a way that seems somewhat intellectually
like
respectable. Exactly, where there's an alternate explanation. I'm curious, why do you think there's such a vested interest to get people to believe in this phenomenon or to believe that we're not alone?
Yeah, I was trying to avoid going there, but I'll just throw it out there because this will probably really, I don't know where you guys stand on all this. I think it has to do with the fact that it proves evolution.
Yeah.
That's the real reason. If evolution happened here, it can happen elsewhere in the universe, and therefore, if we have life coming from some other place, it's proof that evolution is actually true.
Oh, and also that it's just totally random too, right? That there was no, exactly. Life is not. Sorry, I actually get into this in the cartoon, so I don't have to say this here. You go ahead.
What I love about this is simulation theories become very popular among liberal, secular, technocrats or whatever you want to call it. Are you familiar with simulation theory?
No.
So Elon Musk has been a proponent of this. There have been many big tech Silicon Valley guys. They have argued that we live in a simulation.
Oh, yeah, I do.
That we as humans have the computational capacity. Indeed. We can create simulated universes. We can simulate individuals. We can create these things. And if we can, what are the chances that we are actually in one made by somebody else? And the argument is, if we can do it, then the chances that we exist within a simulated universe are greater than us being in base reality. That's what they believe. I love that idea. You know why? What they've basically said is there is a creator. There is an advanced being well beyond us that has created the universe that we are in and set rules and defined it. And what I often describe simulation theory is like religion 101. They've opened the door and they fail to realize that there are billions of people already way down to the other end of the hall in advanced theology.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They're going, literally simulation theory is, what if there's like a more powerful entity that created the world we're in? And get this, it's only been a few thousand years, but all of the rules of this simulation were created. Well, check this out. In the video game Grand Theft Auto, for instance, you are in a simulated New York City called Liberty City. Nobody built those buildings. They were just made by the creator.
And there's a fake history that was generated.
Exactly. So when we talk about, say, like dinosaur fossils and things like this, and I hear, atheists will say, well, this proves evolution or it proves life existed. And I'm like, not if you entertain simulation theory, because if I was going to make a video game, I'd I'd go on my computer, program some fossils, and stick them in the ground.
Well, this is the other thing too. Whenever this comes up, it seems like some people, they try to make something that sounds very highfalutin and sophisticated, and it's just a more primitive way of understanding things at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because ancient people thought that the gods were using the same tools they used. And simulation theory is just God is using the same tools I use. I use a computer, so God made the universe with a computer, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the understanding of the human body tracks alongside our technological understanding pretty well. I was reading something about how back when everything was very steam powered, people assumed that a lot of the functions of the body was just pressure.
That's right.
Then when we started discovering computers, now it's like, oh, we're like computers actually. And
That's right. That's right.
That's true.
we don't know everything.
Well, it's interesting about the question of the age of the universe, too. My wife, actually, she made this very brilliant observation, but we were having this conversation about the age of the universe and how some will argue, oh, well, we've shown with carbon dating it's millions and billions of years old, and firstly, there's flaws with carbon dating. But she made an excellent point, which was Christ's first public miracle, which is the wedding at Cana. He made wine, and wine is an aged substance. So we know in a single instance, God can make something that seems aged.
Right.
Indeed, but this is what I love about the simulation theory is it's when I hear people talk about this stuff, I say this is page 1 of the religion book I had when I was in kindergarten.
Right.
I'm not trying to be derisive. You should consider reading it. I'm not telling you to believe in any particular religion, but the questions you are asking about the creation of the universe right now were asked thousands of years ago.
That's right.
And there have been people who lived their whole lives studying these questions, wrote great books about them, and it is an interesting arrogance, and it's kind of sad actually.
Yes.
That very intelligent people think they're smart for discovering page 1 of theology.
Yes, exactly.
They're refusing to stand on the shoulders of giants. That's ultimately what it is. I have to be the one who figures it out. And you're like, no, people way smarter than you built on the work of people way smarter than you.
It's actually really simple because you and everybody listening deals with this all the time. When I'm sitting down with a liberal guy, so I like to play poker myself, Texas Hold'em, and there'll be a guy at the table and he'll be a liberal and he'll say, Trump is bad, Trump is a criminal for all of these reasons. And the first thing I realize is the amount of information I have to give this man for him to realize he is incorrect is massive and would take longer than 3 hours.
And he wouldn't believe it.
The idea is you start from page 1. Okay, Trump is bad. Why do you think so? Then he says, Trump said Nazis are very fine people. You immediately just pull up the quote, transcript, and now you've got him to page 2. He's still going to be like, okay, well, that one thing. To get him to understand all the lies from the press and the manipulations would take weeks. And that's very much in the same vein. He looks at me like, you're wrong about everything. He just doesn't know what he's talking about. And you can't convince him he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So for the people that follow simulation theory, they have opened the door, but they're looking to say Seamus or Father, and they're saying, I can't understand how you've come to the conclusions you have. Therefore, you must be wrong about it. I'm going to go figure it out. And they're putting themselves in a remedial position instead of, in fact, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Well, oh, yeah, no, I was actually going to ask you about this, but...
Well, and part of that just has to do with the... It has to do with just the modern arrogance, right? Do you really think you're that bright you're going to figure it out to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm curious about this, too, with respect to demonic influence. When it comes to the ET question, have you ever experienced anything in an exorcism or with people who are claiming to be possessed where there was some kind of obsession with the idea of ETs or some kind of attempt on the part of the demon to disguise itself as an extraterrestrial?
Not me personally, because they know I don't buy it. So demons know what they can pull over your wool over your eyes, what they can't. So they don't. However, other exorcists who are a bit green, let's just say, or just didn't know their theology very well, very often would get suckered into it because they would say, oh, well, there's these grays, right? These demons would present themselves as grays, and they would actually morph looking like what we see, with the airdrop or the water drop eyes and the little nose and the whole bit. They would actually morph into that, and they would say that, yeah, we're not angels and we're not men, we're not good, we're not bad, we're kind of like in the middle. And like, no, you're not. You're just a demon playing doing this behavior. And a lot of the way that you actually know it is that as soon as you bind them, there's a certain pressure you can bind them from doing certain things. You say stop doing that, they stop doing it.
So, how much of the phenomena do you think is a demon playing on our pop cultural understanding of what aliens would look like versus demons actually having influenced our initial values with respect to like what aliens might be like?
That's actually a very good question. As far as the latter part, I'm not real sure about how much they've influenced it. I mean, ultimately, the only way we would know is seeing God, and he would tell us, hey, this is how much influence they had. Although there is a certain amount of correspondence, it would seem to follow in the sense, the principle of causation is that the cause is always some way in the effect. So when we see the effect, we can reason back to the cause. Okay, that's the general principle. Well, if you look at, I did a conference on this just actually recently where I talk about how if you actually look at, the aliens abduct people, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's how the people's experience is the same. Demons do the same thing. That they're hyper focused on the reproductive organs. Demons are the same
exactly.
thing. And I just go down the whole thing, and what you find is there's this complete correspondence between all the abduction experiences and actually what demons do to people.
Can I throw something out there? Because you're right, and the thing that comes to mind too, and this is the old trope, is the idea of probing. And it's like, all right, no, but it's like on the one hand, it can be our culture for the past several decades has just been so bent on trying to get people to believe that there's something like sophisticated about sodomy. And the idea that you would have aliens engage in it. Well, this higher life form that can engage in interstellar travel, even they want to engage in that behavior, which is so bizarre, but also it also rings of being demonic, because of course a demon would want to degrade the human person by doing that to them.
Seamus, you need to understand. After tens of thousands of years of technological advancement and the development of interstellar travel faster than light communications, they have finally achieved their goal of sticking things in your butt.
Exactly. That's literally what the narrative is. Yeah.
It is.
Aliens are like, we've finally done it. The apex of our civilization.
What's so interesting about that is that the demons, they want to incite human beings to sodomy, but they themselves find it revulsive. Because it's so disordered, even in their minds.
And so they don't even want to be around it when it happens.
Demons are grossed out.
Yeah, they'll inspire the person to do it, and then they're like, I'm out of here.
Are you familiar with DMT?
Refresh my memory.
Dimethyltryptamine.
Okay, tell me.
Ayahuasca trips, and people, they take this drug and they blast off. They break through the veil. They meet machine elves, they call them.
Yeah.
But I've so it's interesting because the issue of DMT was very, very popular, I think, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to know.
Some people have religious experiences through it.
Mm-hmm. They do. They're doing extended state DMT experiments where they give you an IV drip of DMT to put you in this, permanent hallucination or permanent as long as you're hooked in.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is my hippy-dippy friends are like, it's an amazing experience and you meet entities. My Christian friends are like, those are demons.
Yeah, they can be.
And they're whispering sweet nothings into your ear, telling you what you want to hear, and offering you deals. I've heard stories that people have taken DMT and they've met entities that have promised them knowledge in exchange for certain actions or behaviors.
Right.
And people are like, well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And it seems many people believe that taking DMT will effectively put you in the presence of demons.
It can. I mean, it's the same thing with any other kind of hallucinative drug. It's also true about drugs in general that it can actually be I should say this. Drugs are actually designed by God. He put them on the earth for a reason. And if you look at them, they're different. So like alcohol is actually designed so that you can consume it in a moderated way on a consistent basis, and that it actually can have a health benefit ultimately if you depending on what studies you want to listen to. Okay. But drugs are a little bit different. They're not designed to be taken on a regular basis. They're actually designed as an ad hoc thing to solve a specific problem that we have as human beings, right? That's what they were actually put here for. So that's one of the reasons why I'm opened up to certain things. Now, when you start using it contrary to that usage, it becomes disordered, and then okay, we're back into the domain of the demonic.
So it'd be like popping pills or something, getting addicted to a pharmaceutical.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is where demons can actually get their foot in the door, and especially when it's a hallucinative drug, a hallucinatory drug, it actually is the type of thing that it becomes even more of an open door for the demons to get their foot in the door.
Well, so you mentioned people having religious experiences on DMT. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, there's two parts of it in any kind of hallucination. Some of it can actually be generated by your own brain, in large part. The other part of it, though, is that the demon, if it opens it up, the demons can actually get involved and actually drive the hallucination and then present things to you that you would not necessarily know because they know, etc. And so so you can actually feel like you have a religious experience when all you did was come in contact with demons.
I want to talk about AI.
Okay.
But before we do, we have a sponsor we're going to shout out. It is Bearskin. My friends, check out BAER.SKIN/Tim, Bearskin. These hoodies are fantastic. You may have seen me wearing them in the past. Ian wears them quite a bit. Well, the smart people are locking in their winter gear right now because it's the best time to prep for the winter. I mean, it's November. Get on it. And Bearskin's running a 60% off deal right now, but only if you get your hoodie early. It's built like a tank, 340 GSM microfleece, 10 pockets, clean, rugged fit. It looks fantastic, and it zips right into the heavy storm rain jacket to become 100% waterproof when you need it. So when it turns cold, wet, or windy, you're not scrambling at the last minute. You'll get free U.S. shipping, fast delivery, and you'll have locked in your winter gear early, so it's a win-win. Text TIM to 36912 to lock in your 60% off. Again, text TIM to 36912, and you'll get a link sent straight to your phone. You can check it out whenever you need to. If you're busy, just make sure you get that hoodie. You'll also be supporting the Fallen Outdoors and Hope for the Warriors veterans programs, so you're not just buying great gear, you're backing a cause that matters. Don't wait till you're freezing to realize your hoodie sucks. Get Bearskin now. While it's 60% off, text TIM to 36912. Shout out, thanks for sponsoring the show. Let's talk about AI, however. So one of the things that we're seeing, which is I'll start with this. Many people have said that AI is effectively going to be some kind of God-like thing. Not literally God, but it will lord over man. It will control us. It will manipulate us. And we are walking ourselves towards something truly dark. However, I wonder, as well as many others, that will AI be the destruction? Will it wipe us out? We have the story from the BBC, which is actually just from the other day. I wanted ChatGPT to help me. So why did it advise me how to kill myself? Something we've been seeing quite consistently.
Right.
This machine we have built is reflecting back very horrifying things. It seems strange to suggest, but is there demonic presence in computer programs and AI? Because this stuff sounds very terrifying.
Well, I'm sure, Tim, you know, but for the sake of the audience, the structure of AI is that it's basically AI is controlled by three things. The first is the instruction set on the very chip that's built in order to execute it. So, and that's why that's so important. You know, the Trump's discussion with the with NVIDIA and that type of thing in relationship to it. So that restricts what it can and cannot do. The second thing is the actual programming, because the AI actually is based on a programming, and so they can program it to do certain things and not other things. This is why we had liberal answers to AI in the past, although I suppose that's still going on. And then the third is the actual data set that you're using in order to extract the actual answers from based upon the thing. Okay, all that being said, so that those three things can determine what AI is going to actually return. The fact that it's telling us to kill ourselves or things of that sort is basically a sign that either in the programming they're telling it to do that, or it's not necessarily in the program is just open-ended, but that the data set that they're taking it from, which is the basic stuff out on there, already has it out there. And so it's just extracting this stuff and giving it to us because it's a machine. It's just telling us this is what I found, here it is. Okay. Does that mean that there's demonic into it? Can demonic get involved? Yes, they can. But I have not seen any evidence that convinces me of it that they have. I think what you see is the stuff that would come back that looks demonic is just the fact that in the data set that they're using, there's demonic stuff in there.
If we are creating this gigantic brain
Yeah.
and we created many of them. It's kind of, there is a very real threat that this can wipe out humanity. It can cause us to deviate from the natural order in very extreme ways. It feels like if there was a tool of human destruction, this would be it.
Yeah, well, I think that it's like any other tool or any kind of I mean, even nuclear, understanding nuclear bombs and things like that. Nuclear bombs could actually be used for legitimate purpose, not necessarily over the human beings, but I'm just saying. So I think that it's in relationship to the AI. It's an extraordinarily powerful tool that's becoming more and more powerful as we go along, which is a good thing in and of itself. But I think you're going to have evil people using it, and the evil that we're going to see, that could lead to those very things.
I suppose the scary thing is, could it be demons who inspire us to make nuclear bombs or to make AI that tricks us into harming ourselves? How do we...
Well, they can drive people. They're not going to... Okay. They're not going to drive us to discover or develop a technology that in and of itself is good, because they don't want us to have anything that's good.
But nuclear bombs are...
Well, I mean, but like, for example, you could use a nuclear bomb in order to, say, stop a tsunami or something. I'm just saying, right?
Well, it's not gonna, but...
Right, but you get the point.
But there's the argument, I suppose, is we could use the capability of nuclear detonation on the Martian ice caps or something.
Right.
The yield isn't great enough.
Right. But that all being said, so you can have something that's good, but I think that which I think AI is in and of itself, I just think it's going to be used for evil. And the demons are going to inspire the people to program it or to allow it to focus on certain parts of the data set to produce certain kinds of responses.
We know that it does this. I think Elon was just talking about this on Joe Rogan. And listen, I've got plenty of apprehension about Elon. I think there's some things he says and does that concerns me. But he mentioned that the way that AIs rate human life varies based on race and ethnicity. So he was saying Grok is the only AI he's familiar with that rates the lives of white people as being equally valuable to other racial groups. But some of the other AIs will say 20 Africans or 20 white people are worth one African in terms of their moral equation, of course, to combat racism, according to these companies, which is hilarious.
Well, and that gets to my point about the fact that it's either someone's programming it to do that, or it's in the data set that they're using, or it's in the programming to look at only certain parts of the data set. Or to prioritize parts of the data set over others.
So I look at this stuff like zombies and liches. Zombies are mindless. They are, I think they're considered neutral evil in a certain respect in like fantasy lore, because their intention is just mindless drones.
Right.
And so we want to stop the zombies. Zombies make more zombies. But then there's a lich, an undead of intelligence that knows what it's doing. And while a zombie will march towards you mindlessly, and it's very easy for you to recognize and do away with, the lich lurks in the shadows, fomenting more zombies and working these plans. So my concern is, is it possible that there is demonic possession that hides itself from you and from exorcism, shields itself so perfectly it's near undetectable, and foments very serious evil from behind the scenes?
Are you talking specifically in relationship to AI or in a particular case of a person?
Just anything. Just, you've got a woman who gets possessed, and, they start... well, actually, let me ask you this, just to make sure I don't want to get this wrong and make assumptions. When you have a possession, there is some sort of untoward action that has made people seek an intervention. Is that typically how it happens?
That's correct, yeah.
They're doing something bad. Is that...
Or they have done something bad. They may have stopped it, but they've done something bad.
Yeah, so typically, someone who is possessed, there is something that has to be stopped or addressed. Is that...
Usually, yes.
So what happens if, at the higher level, there is someone who is possessed, they're doing something bad, but they're hiding, and they intend to do something very bad, like make a bomb, blow somebody up, mass shooting?
Okay. There's two components to answer that question adequately. The first is that there's two kinds of possession. There's open and closed. Open is where you walk in, the demon immediately manifests. He's not hiding anything. Then the other one is closed, and that's where the demon hides. And it takes an enormous amount of prayer to get that guy to the surface. So you can have that, and I've seen that, and so people can be possessed by a closed spirit, which then drives all sorts of bad things and is trying to cause damage. The second part of it is has to do with one of the forms of diabolic influence is called subjugation. That's when people make a pact with the devil. Now, what happens is when people are possessed, the demon starts driving that compatibility with them for a long period of time, so that the demon gains more and more control. And at a certain stage, the demon's going to suggest to the person some good thing that he wants to bequeath to the individual.
Knowledge. In the case of the DMT strip, right?
It's usually, it's usually knowledge in exchange for perfect possession is what we call it. And once that perfect possession happens, and if the person gives consent to it and the demon takes perfect possession over it, the demon is actually the one in the driver's seat all the time. And he mimics the person's personality to such a degree that the only way you can tell that the person's possessed is through secondary signs, which is this malice, the duplicity, the constant lying, the causing all this damage, and etc. That's the only way that you can kind of discern it. Someone like that can actually get into a situation like this and do that type of thing.
Wow. How many demons are there?
Billions, literally.
Wow.
But the number that can influence us is much more restricted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You mean?
So is that because God only allows a certain number of them, or because there's a kind of quality to their existence that allows them to infest us?
It's actually both, but it has to do with, they're both actually connected. So basically the way it works is that particular sins are actually the domain of a specific demon. And so if you commit a sin, it actually opens the door to that specific demon. Or category of demons, because a lot of them can get in. There can be more than one demon in relationship to that.
Billions of demons. What are they doing typically? I mean, do they hang out at like demon clubs?
They just sit in hell suffering.
But periodically they escape, or how does that work?
So in other words, if we open up the door and then God permits it, they're allowed to quote come out of hell, so to speak, and influence the individual and start acting upon them.
But they're still separated from God when they're out of hell, so it's not as if they're like having fun out here in the sun. Or something.
Right. So people who commit grave sins, they go to hell too.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they're there alongside demons, and and they all suffer together, or
yeah. Well, here's the real beaut. Whichever demon it was that got you to commit that grave sin, that's the dude you're under in hell.
And so that demon is suffering in hell.
Yeah, and he's going to make your life miserable too.
Your afterlife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oof, that's terrifying.
How many angels are there?
There's even more than there are of demons. So
really? So fewer fell.
Yeah, fewer. So a third fell. So that's actually in Scripture.
Oh, that's right. A third of the stars.
Yeah, a third of the stars fell. That's the revelation that a third of the angels fell, but whereas 2/3 of them remained faithful.
What do angels do?
Well, there's two things that they do. Is if they have some assigned task that deals with us, they're helping us. They also see God face to face the whole time, but they're helping us. Some of them, it depends on where they're at in the hierarchy. So the middle tier, they're in the government there's actual government in heaven, but it's not over bloated.
It's not like this. Not like this. Yeah. Don't.
They don't overtax
Libertarians
you.
are fainting.
Yeah, they don't overtax you.
Libertarians are like, I'm going to the other place. There's no.
Yeah. But what they do is they're the ones who propagate the commands that God wants certain things to be done. They propagate that down through the hierarchy of angels so that it's proper.
Is there angelic possession?
There are a couple of saints who have written about that it does, but there's two parts to it. One is that it's only temporary. And it's only done for the sake of the good of the individual. It's never to take over the person. It's in order to protect them or to do something.
Like get them out of a difficult situation or something. Like
yeah, exactly. Like so, suppose you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you just feel yourself moving the wheel, and all of a sudden there's a car that would have clocked you or something.
Yeah.
There's a story that I've told quite a bit about a guy, and I'll keep it short because I've told it so many times. But he was a drug addict, partier, living in sin. Partying in the woods one day, woke up in the morning to go take a leak, and he walked away from his group. And while he was relieving himself, he felt a booming voice from within his chest ask, "Why are you doing this?" And he said he had like an adrenaline rush, was like panicking. The voice asked again, "Why are you doing this? You have to stop." And he said he immediately began seeking answers as to what happened, and he found the Christian church, and then he ended up moving into a Christian community and turned his life around, opened a business. Still very much like a punk rocker, skateboarding kind of guy, but regularly attending church, very Christian. And that's why I asked about something like that, because I've heard stories of people who felt a presence from within them guide them or do something like that. And that sounds desirable.
It is, but it's the general consensus is that it's very rare.
That's kind of a bummer.
It is.
You know, that there's the evil forces trying to corrupt you and hurt you and just pull you down. But it's rare.
Yeah, okay. But that actually brings up a very good point. Okay. The good angels, their desire is that we function according to the way that God designed us, which means fully cognizant, fully our own free will, making our own choices and decisions. Whereas and so as a result of that, whenever they're doing their job and keeping the demons at bay or other evil things at bay, we function normally, which means we don't recognize their behavior, what they're doing behind the scenes, because this is normal life to us. What we notice in relationship to demons is that there's something that's not natural or ordinary. And so we tend to see that more. But in point in fact, if you're living a normal life, that's an indicator that your guardian angel and the other angels are actually protecting you and keeping these things from happening.
We only have like 10 minutes, so we'll get a little fun with it.
But overtime, it's crazy. My guardian angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like my life should not be as normal as it is. It's not like a particularly normal life, but especially in this line of work, doing what we do with all the crazy people there are out there, it's like, I got a good guardian angel, man. I really do.
Well, God has a plan for you, and maybe that plan is changing the culture and being a positive influence and a force. Some people probably have more responsibility than others.
Yeah. I hope so. Listen, twistedplots.com if you want to help me do it.
He's shameless.
Shameless Seamus.
Shameless Coughlin.
Well, you have to believe in what you're doing.
And
otherwise, no one else will believe you.
Yeah.
But with the last few minutes, we'll get crazy with it a little bit. You're talking about witches and warlocks, people who are, it's sort of like an inverse to the Exorcist or whatever.
Right.
Are there, do some of these people try to invoke demons? I mean, the answer is obviously yes. We know that people try to invoke demons, but is it possible for them to call upon demons to give them these manifestations you see, like strength or knowledge?
Yes, depending on the proficiency of the person that's trying to do the invocation. So you can have people who just try and do it. Once in a while, the demons will show up. God will permit them to show up, even for somebody who's not very proficient. But the more proficient they become, the more the demons will intervene and do it.
And is this, like, why does God allow that? If a human being is like, I want the demonic possession, I'm evil, God says, okay.
Yeah, it's part. He respects our free will.
And technically, I learned this from you, any mortal sin is you giving permission over to the demons to possess you. It rarely happens. God usually doesn't allow it, but any mortal sin puts you under their
It's a grave disorder.
So we've heard one of the signs of possession is strength.
Yeah.
So I'm curious of people intentionally trying to invoke possession so they can have unearthly strength or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if people, I mean, I'm sure there are people that do that. And actually, no, I take that back. There are people who actually try to actually petition and invoke the demons to come to possess them. We know that's the case. It's not, I don't think it's that common, but it's actually there. Usually they're trying to use the demons as a medium, like, hey, come over here and help, strengthen me so I can do this, but they don't want the possession because they know that the possession's it's going to be unpleasant.
When people are possessed, are they conscious while they're being controlled?
It runs a gamut. So it's everything from they're completely they know everything that's going on, but they just realize they don't have any control over what they're doing.
Oof.
All the way to they're completely blacked out and they don't know anything, and they wake up later and like, what happened?
Wow.
And it's a whole gamut. So you can get people that are even in the middle who kind of like it's like they're super drunk.
Or dreaming.
Or dreaming, exactly.
There's one thing I want to ask about, and if this is like a disordered curiosity, let me know, because maybe this isn't information we should seek. But given that these demons have existed for all of human history, do they ever say things during exorcisms relevant to moments in history that humans might not know about or that might not have been recorded?
Yeah, they do.
So I'm curious about that. Am I allowed to ask, or is that not information that I should be seeking?
But so basically, whenever they do that type of thing, 90% of the time they're trying to get you to go down a rabbit hole to distract you or to try and get you under their control. They want to get in the driver's seat. And so that's why you just stick to very certain things. So unless the historical thing is directly connected to the case that you're working on, you ignore it.
So they'll like throw a red herring out there to try to get you interested. Can I ask of any examples?
Like for example, in 2007, this one demon said, politically, things are going to get really interesting in 2009.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I just ignored it, didn't pay any attention to it. Of course, it happened, but there it is.
Are we living in the end times?
Not quite the end. I think we're getting close to it, but I don't think we're right there yet.
Do you have a ballpark? How many years?
I have a theory. Again, it's my own theory. There was an apparition of whether people believe in that or not. There's another matter, but of Our Lady in La Salette, France. And there, she actually laid the timeline out. She said, people are going to get so bad, there's going to be a chastisement. Something's going to happen. Which I think we're all seeing that we're kind of like barreling towards something bad happening.
Yes. Yep. 100%.
So, and then actually,
then.
and she actually said in Akita, she said, if man isn't careful, the chastisement will come from his own hands. So, I mean, when I saw COVID, I'm like, I can see now how that could happen, right? Some biological thing or even nuclear. But she said, then after that, there will be 25 years of good harvest, and then, so what basically means at that point, people will really get their act together. We'll see very virtuous people living lives in publicly and that type of thing. She said, but after that, men will say it's no longer necessary to maintain such disciplines. At that point, all the predictions are that the morals of the society will implode so rapidly and so badly that it's at that point that the prediction of the Antichrist, which is in Scripture, becomes true.
So basically, a chastisement happens, and there's a 25-year period where people are very good and moral and return to faith, and then after that, it just degrades even more quickly than we saw our own society degrade over the past.
We've at least 25 years.
Yeah, I always tell everybody it's going to be the millennials.
Yeah,
that are going to cause the implosion.
I would not. I would not disagree.
So, but would you say we're?
If you think about it, if let's just say it happens in the next 10 years, and then we have 25 years, who's going to be in charge of the stuff?
Yeah. There's going to be a bunch of Redditors talking about their fur baby that they have back.
Well, it's either the millennials or the Gen Zers.
The Gen Z is very right wing compared to former generations, though. But
some of it,
obviously, and it's true. And you can be right wing to a non-virtuous degree as well. You can take that in the wrong direction. So, it is pretty weird, the split between men and women.
Yes.
And how that manifests can be very strange. Just like you have a man and a woman running for office. Every woman's a Democrat, every man's a Republican.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they actually did. I don't know if you saw that statistic. They said if and I don't want to argue this particular point. I mean, although I might be open to it at some point, is that if women didn't vote, 80% of the Democrats wouldn't get elected.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
they all vote communist.
Yep.
Well, it's also interesting to see how it breaks down along racial lines, too, because with this last election with Mondami, people are saying, oh, well, it's because the Republicans have lost women. But if you look at the 2024 election, married women and white women actually do vote Republican generally. But with Mondami, it was clearly racial resentment against white people that motivated his election, because he literally said he was going to tax white neighborhoods more. And he used that phrasing. He said, we need to tax white neighborhoods more. So people are talking about the male-female perspective on that. I think that has a lot more to do with racial resentment.
Man, there are a lot of people that think the Antichrist is already here among us. Some are saying it's Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, maybe Donald Trump.
Yeah, but if you actually know the characteristics of the Antichrist, it's discussed by the saints throughout history. These guys don't meet the muster. It's kind of like, when people say, do you think Obama's the Antichrist? I said, no, he's too stupid. Because the Antichrist is supposed to, there's two primary, he's going to be endowed with Satan's intelligence. The second thing is that he will be such a charismatic figure that even for good people, it's going to be hard not to get sucked in.
Wow.
Whereas we instinctively have I'm with you like Musk. There's some things I like about Musk. There's other times I'm like, I'm not so sure.
This Seamus guy is pretty charismatic and smart.
Well,
what's he doing over
why
there?
you guys should go over to twistedplots.com and support the show.
Which If your audience asks, I'll do a shameless plug. If people ask if they want any more information on some of the stuff that I've said, they can actually buy the book Dominion, which is on Amazon of mine.
Yeah.
Or go to Centrad Press and order it from there.
Dominion?
Dominion. So there's two versions of it. Dominion is the version which I sent to you, although I might have sent you the Diabolic. That's the one that for general public. And then there's another one called Diabolic Influence, which is actually 300 pages longer because it includes all the diagnostic material that clergy and psychologists can use to determine whether something is diabolically influenced.
So I'm curious about the Antichrist here. You mentioned that he'll have Satan's intelligence. And so that would mean he would be instant, like with someone who's possessed?
Because he'll be, well, basically, Satan will take him over. He'll be perfectly possessed, so Satan will be basically speaking through him all the time.
Mm-hmm. And so essentially, because evil can only invert, it's the Antichrist, it's Satan trying to mock Christ. But I'm curious what the actual mechanisms are. I mean, is this a person who decided to give their life over to Satan at some point, or someone from birth?
The general consensus is that he's possessed from the time of birth, but then by the time once he reaches his first act of conscious decision, he gives himself fully over to him.
Why do that? Why would?
Because there's other perks they get, like knowledge. The demons can actually cause pleasure, good feelings. They can make us feel loved, etc. So who knows what the reason is.
Isn't it like short-term gains, long-term losses?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, to be honest, that describes communists.
It does. Yeah.
They extract all the value in a very short term, burn the system down, and then everyone suffers for a long period. I mean, Soviet Union is a good example of that.
Yep.
Well, I suppose we just...
One more question.
Yeah, get it.
Yeah. So as far as the Antichrist goes, you always have people, and I love my Protestant brothers and sisters out there. Obviously, I love you so much that I want you to become Catholic, but one thing you'll see with certain like low church Protestants is it feels like every 5 years they're putting out a new date for the end of the world. Honestly, it's like every 2 years.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We have no idea. I'm curious, like, what do you think inspires people to do this? Is it just a pride thing, or do you think demons also want people to be that fixated on the end of the world? Like, what is that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they want to be us to be fixated on, but they also want us to be lulled into sleep. Oh, I got 5 more years. I don't have to worry about it. I got 25 more years.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
So,
it's a good point.
Indeed. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I appreciate you coming and
yeah, thank you, Tim, for having me. I enjoyed it.
Every day I see a story and I just feel like demons, they're possessing people.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, I don't know. But you already shouted out your book. Is there anything else you want to mention? Do you have any social media or anything like that?
No, that's it. I mean, if you want to listen to me, I'm also on Sensus Fidelium, which is a channel online, so people can just type. If you just go to YouTube and type in my name, it's all over the place. Although you have to be careful because people have actually taken my voice and they AI generated it, and so now they're putting out stuff with my voice on it. So be careful with that.
They're doing AI Ripperger stuff now.
Yeah, they are.
No, that's awful. I saw that happen to a couple other priests online too. I didn't know they were doing that. Too.
Seamus, I think you have something to promote before we wrap up.
Not that I can think of.
Oh, okay. Anyway, thanks.
No, hold on. Wait, no, I didn't mean it. So, listen, I mean, we have the most powerful infrastructure for storytelling that's ever existed in history. People form their values through stories. And this infrastructure is totally owned by people who hate us and hate our way of life, and they've been chipping away at it for decades. So after 11 years producing over 700 animated cartoons, myself and my team feel that we are ready to produce a full-length animated series, and we've already made the 25-minute-long pilot. We need your help in order to get fully funded. We've got 1 week left in order to do so. In fact, just a little bit less. We've gotten a lot of traction. We've raised a lot of money, but we do need your help getting to the finish line. So go over to twistedplots.com, pledge $50, get us to that finish line. You'll get access to the pilot, and you'll be part of the creation of the future of entertainment. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
For everybody else, the backstage Timcast IRL pre-production is going to be live for our members on the Discord server. So go to timcast.com, click join us, and we're going to have a wide-angle camera as you're watching our guests come in, as we produce the stories. You can hang out, submit comments, and then you get to watch the full show pre-recorded live. Definitely do it. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Thank you all so much for hanging out. And for everybody else, we'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL.